Let her conquer fear and fall like a sword. I run into the heat of day, like a knife I fight until the fight is won. In the rage I say each and every one, till this war is won.
Hello viewers! This week we have a real treat for the people who believe that the handhelds can come out with more unique games than their console counterparts. The only game where Princess Peach ended up being the protagonist, the aptly titled Super Princess Peach, a game that begins and ends with its premise. Princess Peach finally has to take up the reins and rescue Mario and Luigi from some more hijinks. One Toad also got captured in that raid for some reason that the Koopa Troop expects Princess Peach to care about, and she frankly does. In this game, she's almost as take charge as they're showing in Thousand Year Door, and along for the ride, she's given a living umbrella named Perry as weapon and companion, although they don't bother having the two sit down and have any real conversations to establish a friendship or anything throughout the game. The thing the game does have is one of the stupidest plot lines I've seen in this series since Mario and Wario's blinding-based murder scheme. The game starts with the Koopa Troop somehow attaining the game's magic plot device, the Vibe Scepter, and yes, Nintendo made the choice to call it that deliberately, which, in spite of its name, isn't a giant dildo, but instead a magic device that causes people to change their emotions. The Koopa Troop use it and their forces to storm the castle, cause the entire castle to fall apart due to the loss of their emotional states, and they are able to capture Mario and Luigi on behalf of Bowser, who didn't bother coming with. While all this was happening, mind you, Princess Peach was on a stroll at some other part of the kingdom. So, instead of capturing the amazingly vulnerable Princess Peach when she was in the middle of the woods with only 3 Toads and Toadsworth alongside her, you thought it smarter to storm the whole castle, a building whose very purpose is total security. Such is the brilliance of the Koopa Troop's planning department. Of course, a plan has to have a fuck-up in it, so for absolutely no reason and no cause, when the Koopa Troop return, the Goomba who was given the Vibe Scepter also infects the entire Koopa Troop with unstable emotions. With Perry in hand, Peach has to traverse 8 worlds of the Mushroom Kingdom and master control of her emotions to defeat the enemies in her way. While I know some of you watching may be expecting me to tear this incredibly shitty and unmemorable title apart simply because of its reputation, that actually isn't the case. Now, you may be right in your belief that this game takes this one chance of protagonist reversal to take the piss out of Princess Peach's abilities to be the hero, and paints her as a fragile, ditzy, and uncontrollable character. But in the bigger picture, it's actually one of the better Mario platformers out there. Now, I'm not talking crazy good like Super Mario Bros. 3 or Super Mario World, but definitely a head higher than some of the others left in this series. Yes, Princess Peach does get the shaft in this game, but that adds to the tone of lightheartedness pervading this entire game experience. From the art direction to the soundtrack, even down to the animation quirks of Princess Peach and Perry, this game is incredibly cheerful and enjoyable to play. Almost like a Kirby game, honestly. It's not going to test many of your skills simply because the difficulty has fallen way down on the curve, but damn, it's a cute game. That being said, in the strictest terms, Super Princess Peach is a platformer with more bells and whistles, because instead of solving all your problems with simple jumping, since Peach is kitted out with Perry, she also has the ability to attack by smacking everything in front of her, and with some upgrades that allow Perry to float across gaps and shoot energy beams at enemies who come into the studio expecting a traditional Mario stomping, are now getting destroyed effortlessly in droves via bat to the face. Also, the game doesn't really have a timer and therefore has more of an exploration element. There are secrets to find in this game, and unlike other Mario titles, a lot of them are easy to find just by paying attention and going everywhere you can in a level. And the Toad pickups are actually required for the game's finish. It is true, to even get to the Bowser battle at the end of the game, the player has to go collect every Toad in every level. It is the only time I've ever seen the Mushroom Princess ever give a shit about those little numbskulls. Other than that, there are also soundtracks to collect and some puzzle pieces and mini-games to find, which are about as useful to the game as were the mini-games in Super Mario 64 DS. But however you want to get on the HMS useless distraction is fine by me. Likewise, the levels are absurdly long and have some great gimmicks to them. One being a zip-line type challenge that feels like the Donkey Kong Country minecart levels except 10 times less bullshit, and sometimes when Perry somehow transforms into a functioning submarine and they have to traverse a typical Mario underwater section. Apparently it has some sort of bubble-based weapon to defend from bloopers, but that's controlled with the microphone and that's always a barrel of laughs to use. Throughout all this, you'll have to employ the mechanic that everyone remembers this game for: Princess Peach's uncontrollable feelings. She gets access to 4 different emotions: joy, which allows her to fly and create whirlwinds; rage, which sets her ablaze and lets her do ground pounds; gloom, which causes her to cry uncontrollably and probably die from dehydration; and calm, the one which transforms your mana into health, and that is really useful as long as you remember it exists. And for the game's credit, they do use these often for some interesting puzzles, such as using gloom to freeze a platform and then smacking a block to crush ice and get across the map. These will come into play on occasion, but mostly you'll be spending these feeling points on the boss fights, and Super Princess Peach came to play with a healthy enemy roster. From return bosses like Petey Piranha down to the unique monsters like Blizzaris, who is a part ice dragon and part frozen pixie who provide just the right amount of challenge and reward at the end of each world to keep the player interested and moving forward. And most of them do use the changing emotions mechanic to create interesting set pieces, including the final boss, which manages to be a memorable and fun time between Bowser's 3 phases. And that's not a common thing to happen in video games overall, so it's definitely worth noting. After the game is defeated, you can go back and monkey around because the post-game does have some extra levels and stronger versions of the same bosses. But on the scale of bonus content quality, it is really piddling, as in I didn't bother one bit with dealing with them. And speaking of useless additions, there is one last little thing this game has: the only overarching plot point. After each boss is defeated on the road to Bowser's Castle, Perry, Princess Peach's weapon and companion character, will have a dream exposing a bit more of his backstory, and while I will drop a spoilers ahead for this, there is entirely 0 point to these Thousand Year Door style parallel plots, because Perry's storyline has no climax. It doesn't go anywhere or does anything because the denouement, the ending, has been surgically removed from this game. The entire story is that Perry used to be a small child who was found by an old toad on a mountain, who then inexplicably ran into a magic guy and his monster henchman, who transformed him into an umbrella for easier kidnapping because Perry apparently had magical powers his boss needed. The magician dropped Perry, and he was rescued by a merchant who sold him to Toadsworth, and that's the entire story. Perry is never returned to his grandfather, and since he never makes an appearance in any other game, it's safe to say that Perry's entire character and this entire plot point are giant, big-lipped alligator moments. You literally could have ended each chapter with "great job, but there are more bad guys out there, let's get them!" And it could have been better than this backstory that goes absolutely nowhere. Yes, it's tragic, but did it ever occur to you that total nonsense of this story when you realize that the 2 shadowy figures in the freaking flashbacks actually never make an appearance in the actual game you are making at the time? As well as requiring the player to find every toad in the game, these are the only 2 real negatives of this entire thing. Overall, it's simply an incredibly solid platform game that came out of an oddball studio, Tose, who bills themselves as a supporting developer for other people's projects, and in the future, maybe they'll get more chances to be top billing, because this is some great stuff. The platforming is tight and functional, the combat is a welcome addition to normal Mario shenanigans, the worlds are bright, fun, and enjoyable to traverse, the enemies are varied and actually pose a threat to Princess Peach, and the animation work is flawless in showing that pixel art can be more effective than 3D, because Princess Peach and Perry moving throughout this game is cute and adorable. I simply love Perry's smiles and shock when he's both not moving and moving, although I can see why the game hasn't caught the eyes of the audience overall, since there's not much more to say about the game. It's solid and everything works, but it doesn't push any envelopes and the game's all over when Mario is rescued from Bowser's grasp, and they probably have a party to celebrate with Mario baking the cake this time. It may be the curse of the handheld game, deliberately made to be snacky and enjoyable at the time, but not have much lasting effect on their series, which is why many of them are relegated to these spin-off ideas. Anyway, I liked it, and this final scoreboard will definitely reflect on that. And let's make sure to remember the old adage of victory for gamers, because we all damn well deserve it. Thanks guys, and I'll see you next time for more kidnapping shenanigans.